Hello, friends. I'm Vitaly Portnikov. Special representatives of the President of the United States, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, will meet in Berlin on Monday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, German Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in an attempt to understand the possibility of a compromise on the peace plan that the administration of President Donald Trump is pushing to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. In Washington, according to the Axios publication, the issues of territory and security guarantees for Ukraine remain the main problems in this peace plan. The administration considers President Zelensky's statement that Ukrainian citizens can decide territorial issues in a referendum a breakthrough in the negotiations. However, from a legal point of view, it is completely unclear how such an issue can be resolved, even if the President of Ukraine reaches an agreement with the American representatives on it. The Constitution of Ukraine does not provide for any referendum that could be an instrument for resolving territorial issues. So, for such a referendum to take place, appropriate amendments to the Constitution are needed, not concerning the territory, but concerning the holding of the constitutional referendum itself, which would involve changes to the territorial integrity of Ukraine. However, the Ukrainian Constitution directly prohibits holding such events in its perpetual provisions. And how to bypass these articles of the Constitution, it seems to me, no world lawyer knows now. Therefore, the conversation about Ukraine recognizing some of its territories as controlled by another country remains purely theoretical. Even if such a decision is adopted at the level of the President of Ukraine, the Verkhovna Rada, or voted in a nationwide referendum, it will remain legally invalid, and any new Ukrainian government will easily be able to reject this decision as one that does not comply with the main provisions of the basic law of Ukraine. Well, or the current constitution will have to be abolished and the process of adopting a new one begun, which is unlikely to be realistic in the conditions Ukraine is in today. The adoption of such constitutional amendments that would allow a referendum is also unlikely to be realistic, even if there is a consensus that such an instrument will allow Ukrainian citizens to express their opinion on the territorial integrity of the country. Regarding the issue of security guarantees, as the Axios publication assures, this discussion is currently moving forward. And the United States is ready to provide Ukraine with guarantees similar to Article 5 of NATO, and these guarantees will be binding and will be ratified by the U.S. Congress. In practice, this means that if Russia, after the final agreement of the peace deal, launches a renewed attack on Ukraine, the United States will be ready to fight alongside Ukraine against the Russian Federation. Imagining that Ukraine will receive such guarantees remains more a matter of science fiction for now, because they will actually mean the consent of the United States to a nuclear war with the largest, apart from the United States itself, nuclear power of our time. And then the question arises, why, along with this, the United States continues to insist that Ukraine not join NATO? After all, Ukraine's accession to NATO will create exactly the same risk of a major nuclear war between Washington and Moscow. Therefore, for now, the discussion about security guarantees, and such that will be approved by the American Congress and will oblige the United States to participate in the defense of Ukraine, although I should immediately say that Article 5 itself does not automatically trigger such a mechanism. All this looks quite strange and rather a theoretical consideration of the plans that are currently on the working table of Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner. The most important point that we can see in the Axios publication regarding the meeting between Witkoff and Kushner, on the one hand, and Zelensky, Merz, and Macron, on the other, is that Washington does not know whether Russia will agree to these U.S. proposals. Well, of course, would you, in Putin's place, agree to proposals that would foresee the inevitability of a military clash between the United States and the Russian Federation in the event that Russia resumes its attack on Ukraine? Thus, we can say that for now, the American administration is occupied not so much with understanding the terms the Russian president will agree to and how to force him to end the aggressive war that Putin started against our country, as much as with pressuring our country to adopt conditions that could lead to internal destabilization in Ukraine and thus facilitate the Russian Federation's occupation of new Ukrainian territories. After all, it is absolutely obvious that without Russia's consent, no agreements between the United States and Ukraine, or the United States and European countries, will make any sense. And in Moscow, despite the surprising conviction of American President Donald Trump, no one has yet agreed to the American president's peace plan, but have only emphasized that, in fact, certain points of this plan may find understanding in the Kremlin, while certain points are categorically not accepted by the Russian side. And, of course, this perception of Trump's proposals by representatives of the Russian political leadership, and first and foremost by President Putin, creates opportunities for Moscow to buy time in peace negotiations, as much as the Russian official needs to continue the aggressive war. And even if we imagine that some plan will be actually agreed upon between Washington and Kiev, there are no guarantees, or even a high probability, that these proposals will be approved in the Russian capital and can lead to real peace negotiations, and not to that imitation that we have been encountering practically the entire time of U.S. President Donald Trump's stay in the Oval Office. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel. Subscribe to it. Subscribe to my social networks, to the channels on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, which help develop these products. Victory and peace to you. Good luck.